Hello, I'm Jim Rich. I'm the chaplain at Springhouse Estates in Pennsylvania and glad to be with you for another Acts devotional. I wanted to take a little pause from our Psalm of David theme and just look at one of my favorite verses in the Bible. And it's one of my favorites because it's a very dramatic verse in its historical context, and also because it's an important marker in the history of redemption and God's work of redeeming his people. It's in the book of Exodus, chapter 14, and it's actually verse 13. And in the context, God is in the process of delivering his people from bondage in Egypt. And the Israelites have already left Egypt after Pharaoh was finally forced to let them go. And they've come to the edge of the Red Sea. Now understand, they're facing the water in front of them, and they know that Pharaoh's army is breathing down their necks behind them, and they feel trapped, and they lash out at Moses and say, "Why did you bring us out here in the wilderness to die?" And I think most people's reaction would be to turn to Moses and say, "Hey, you're the leader. Don't just stand there. Do something." But Moses actually turns it around, and he says to the people, "Don't do something. Just stand there." Because Exodus 14:13 says, Moses said to the people, "Do not fear. Stand by and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you will never see them again forever." And while the people may have been in a panic, it seems like Moses was keeping his head while everybody else around him was losing theirs. And he knew that God was able and willing to accomplish what he had promised. And no doubt Moses realized that this difficult situation is something that God specializes in, getting his people out of seemingly impossible, difficult situations or high-pressure afflictions. And Moses also realized, too, that God is a promise-keeping God. And this promise-keeping goes all the way back to the promise that God first made to our first parents in Genesis 3:15, where the seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. And this episode, where God is delivering his people from slavery in Egypt, is going to be the starting point of the nation from which that seed will eventually come. And no doubt Moses understood all this, which is why he was able to say, "Stand fast and watch God work." And so this episode really goes to God's character, especially his faithfulness, because he is a God who does fulfill his promises, even if we don't understand how he's going to do it. We know that he will, in fact, do it. And this should give us great encouragement and strengthen our faith whenever we find ourselves in difficult situations. And it's a good reminder that oftentimes we're naturally inclined to do something instead of just standing there. But it's good to remember that Moses reminds us that sometimes, especially in the spiritual realm, it's important to stand there and watch God. Take care.